Are you an athlete who would like to maximize your performance to succeed at the top level? Head on over to my website at jacobandre.com and book a free 15-minute discovery call to discover if and how I can help you. G'day and welcome to the Mind Your Body Show. I'm your host, Jacob Andre, and today I'm talking to Jasmyn Hewett. Jasmyn, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Jacob.
I'm so excited to have you here, by the way. I'm just going to start off with that. You're someone that I've wanted to talk to on this podcast for a very long time. But before we get into it, what did we interrupt in your day today?
Well, I was working today. Unfortunately, I sustained a footy injury a couple of weeks back now, which is an odd one, which I've recently discovered isn't that odd after all, is splitting the webbing in your hand. So I don't know if you can see, but essentially, if you look at your hand and there's the crease that runs along the top of, I guess, the palm line, I've managed to split the webbing right down to that section. So quite a significant split, which is a bizarre injury, which at the time I didn't know I had sustained. So luckily it didn't hurt, but a pretty silly one if, you know, you're in a job like I am where you are required to wear protective clothing such as gloves, and you can't do that because your fingers can't be split apart. So I'm on light duties at work at the moment, have been for the last week. So thankfully I got to knock off at 3 while everyone's still there, unfortunately. Sorry, guys.
That's crazy. You split the webbing a long way down and you didn't know. How did you not feel that? I imagine that would have been pain. I would have thought it would be painful.
Yeah, so did I. It was a pretty bizarre, I guess, moment in the football game, because it was a pretty big contest. Tried to go up for a pretty big mark and come down, and all I remember was getting landed on in my back. And I'm not sure if in the motion of it, I sort of had the ball in my hand and was landed on, and somehow my finger got caught underneath the ball, or it could have been when I was marking the ball, could have somehow got caught up in my own hands. I'm not entirely sure, but when I got up from the contest, I remember rubbing my back, like, oh my goodness, like, oh, my back, that really hurt. And I look around and the umpire's got the ball up in the air and he's blown the whistle. He said, blood rule, who's bleeding? Because I had my hand behind my back, like I wasn't aware that it was me. So I'm looking around at everyone thinking, like, whose nose is bleeding? Surely, because there's quite a significant amount of blood on the ball. Who's bleeding? Like, that's really gross. Like, yuck. I don't want to, like, tap the ball when it's bleeding, like blood all over it like that. So I'm waiting for them to do a ball change. And then I hear a girl shriek behind me. And I pulled my hand around and she's like, it's you. And I've looked at my hand. I've got, oh my goodness. Like, that's pretty significant. I was expecting to see bone. I was expecting it much worse, but it bled a lot. So I took myself off and sure enough, straight to the ED.
Yeah, far out. That's crazy. Stitches?
Yeah, 10 stitches. But the ED doctor did a fantastic job. It's come together really, really well. And hopefully I'll be lacing up the boots this weekend in the lead up to this game, but we shall see.
Yeah. That's a very quick recovery by the sounds of it.
Yeah, they say so. About 14 days the stitches came out, and then it's been another week on top of that. So I've trained with it now and I can do everything as normal, and it's pretty tricky with work because I have to have it buddy strapped when I'm doing things. So with footy, it's going to be very heavily strapped and a fair bit of padding on there too, just to reinforce it. But yeah, when it comes to work, I can't put those gloves on, so it sort of sidelines me for a bit, which is probably the most frustrating part of it all.
You've mentioned work. What is work?
Work. So I am an aviation rescue firefighter. So an airport fire is probably the short term there. I have been for exactly 1 year now, actually,
really?
To the day. Yeah.
Has it only been 1 year? Because there's a story to this, which I know about. This, I believe, was your dream job, and it's what ended your AFLW career, essentially.
Yeah. Yes. It wasn't meant to. It was, I guess, the way that it was supposed to pan out was that I could get in, I could do my recruit course, and then I could jump straight into the end of a preseason and hopefully gear up for another season following our Premiership win. So I'd signed on the dotted line already that I'd re-signed for my contract for the following year with the Adelaide Crows, and it was just really unfortunate timing when they decided to bring the season forward to August for the first time ever. Like, I couldn't really preempt it or foresee that happening. So when I said yes to my dream job, essentially, I knew that I had to give up the other one. So it was probably one of the toughest things I've ever done. But looking back now, I think that I was able to achieve the things that I wanted to in that space in that previous season. It kind of put the icing on the cake for me. And then you never know what will happen in the future, but I'm pretty happy to say that I achieved what I wanted to in that space, and now I'm just loving the career that I do have.
It doesn't, like, I want to come back onto this later, but it doesn't get much better than what you achieved. Like, you're a premiership player in the AFLW with the Adelaide Crows, and individually you kicked the first goal of the game. Like, I can't imagine, like, what more really could you do? Go out and win like a best on ground or something, like, but to win a premiership.
Yeah, I mean, I still, like, the big goofy smile I have now probably says it all, but I'd think back to it and I honestly just shake my head like, I can't believe that actually happened. I wasn't even expecting to get a game, to be honest. Like, the incredible team that was that year, it was super hard to crack into the team, lots of young guns coming through, and I knew it would be tough coming into a well-oiled team like the Adelaide Crows, because there wasn't really a spot for me going into the team. And even training as hard as I was, everyone was still playing so well on the weekends. There was just no opportunity for me to even crack in or even put my foot forwards. Like, that was so awesome, and I loved being part of that ride. But then when I got my opportunity, I guess you've probably heard it a lot before, the footy gods sort of opened up and shone down on me, I think. And I guess it was a long time coming to experience something like that within the team, having had a few seasons where I had been injured or on the sidelines and watched my team have success previously.
So normally at this point, I try to direct the conversation to go right back to childhood and then bring it back to where you're at now. But let's keep on this for now. We'll sort of do a loop around after. But for now, I want to keep going down this Adelaide Crows path. So you were initially drafted to them. Tell us about the story, going to the Crows, leaving the Crows, coming back to the Crows, how that all happened, and then ultimately ended in that premiership.
Right. Okay. Where do I begin? So I guess to be able to do that, I do have to go back in time a little bit. So more to my childhood, I was never really given the option or opportunity to play football. I mean, my brother played footy for a couple of seasons, but he wasn't really that into it. He probably played to be with his mates, and he also won a premiership when he was 15 and kind of went, that's it for me, all done and dusted, I'm happy. But was more into the more hardcore sports like BMX and things that could break him easily. But I never really got that chance. And I remember having a kick with my dad, and that was sort of like the closest you could get. Or if we happened to play a bit of scratchy footy at school, like, that's probably the closest I ever got to it. So when I moved up to Darwin in 2017, or at the end of 2016, I should say, I didn't know that there was an AFLW competition. So the AFLW came about in 2017, or at least it was in the works to break out in 2017, and I had no idea. I think if I had known about an AFLW competition, I probably would have gone to a tryout or expressed interest in the sport, because I've always loved it, always been a massive fan. And I knew coming into Darwin, moving to Darwin, that I would be able to play football because I knew there was a women's competition in Darwin. I just didn't know the other side of that and the AFLW and what was in the works. So I probably missed my window to be looked at or considered as a rookie. But I started playing footy for St. Mary's in 2017. I recall playing, I think it was about 4 or 5 games into my career with the Saints. And I remember Andrew Hodges, who was assisting with the women's Adelaide Crows based up in Darwin at the time, and gave me a call and said, hey, are you keen to come and have a run or come and train with the Adelaide Crows girls up here? And that was the first I'd ever heard of it. I had no idea that was happening, or that there was an Adelaide Crows in Darwin. Like, that blew my mind initially. Like, what is there an Adelaide team doing up in Darwin? Like, that's crazy. Like, but of course,
Real
that's
quickly, you grew up though in South Australia, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Sorry, back further. I did grow up in South Australia, but we lived in a really remote country town, 3.5 hours north of Adelaide. So it was a pretty long trek for my parents with 4 children, so I'm one of 4, to get to Adelaide to even attempt footy. But anyway, we'll go backwards again. So I come back up to Darwin, played a few games with the Saints, and then got the call from the assistant coach in the Adelaide Crows at the time in Darwin to come out and just train with the girls, basically. And there was a few train-on players at the time trying to, I guess, make up numbers so that they could mirror accurately what the girls were doing down south, because obviously they needed more numbers than what was currently at the Crows camp base in Darwin. So I was lucky enough to have a few training sessions with them, and then at the end of that year with the Saints, I'd been invited to the draft combine, which was the very first draft combine ever for females. So they flew me down to Melbourne, got to run around the MCG and do a few fitness tests. And then a short time later was then drafted into the Adelaide Crows at pick number 2 for 2018. So I started my career at the Crows. It was a bit of a whirlwind, never played footy, played 1 season, got drafted, and then I was playing at the highest level. So personally, it was just like a massive explosion of football. To me, it felt like that. Like I hadn't really played, hadn't really heard of it, and then bang, all of a sudden you're drafted into one of the best teams in the comp. So, pretty bizarre start.
Who was the coach at St. Mary's? Was it Hodgie, or was he?
No, Jared Eilert was my first AFL coach, and he was awesome person, great, club man. And I was actually playing netball with his wife, Barb Eilert, at the time, which is what drew me to Saints. I moved up to Darwin. I remember the second day that I was there, I was out on the netball court playing for one of the teams. I'd messaged a few clubs before getting up there saying, hey, I play, country netball back in South Australia. If you're interested, I'm pretty tall. I'd love to come have a run if you have me. And the Pints Netball Club put their hands up the highest and said, heck yes, we'd love to have you come down. And that's where I met Barbara, which then led to kind of footy as well. So I can kind of thank Barb and Jared for my booming AFL career, basically, as it started.
Yeah, cool. And so Hodgie was the women's coach. Was he working with the Crows or for Thunder?
So he actually, I think initially he was working for the Thunder, and you'd have to confirm from him. Trying to think back, it's a little fuzzy, but he was kind of like the man running the show for the women's Crows in my first, I guess, ever that draft lead up, and then for that first period. Colleen Gwynn was also helping him at the time. So there was a few people that were kind of co-managing the group in Darwin. So I don't necessarily think that there was just one sole person in that kind of cluster. But Beck Goddard was the actual female head coach at the time.
So what was that like, that group training in Darwin, that Darwin Crows group?
Looking back now, I think it was a really special group. There's girls up in Darwin, obviously getting this opportunity to play for a state that's not your own is difficult. Like I know there's a few born and bred Darwin players that wish that there was a Darwin team. But there was pretty early on an established relationship between South Australia and the NT. And having that pathway directly into a team was the best thing, especially for a South Australian who happens to already adore and love the Crows as a footy team, which is, I guess, where my interest stemmed from for the Adelaide Crows in the first place. But backtracking a little bit. So, yeah, it was a really special group. And I probably look back now and could probably say something about each one individually, how they helped me as a person, not just a footy player. So I think that dynamic was really special and really close-knit. And it also made the weekends coming up. So we kind of got to get together on the weekends. It made it even more exciting. It wasn't just going to play footy. It was going to meet the rest of the team and get together. And it was such a special occasion every time the whole group got to be together. So it added that extra little X factor on top of what was already a really close team, in my opinion.
So let me confirm, you were drafted into season 2 of the AFLW. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So what was it like then? So being involved so early on in season 2, and then right up until only last season, the difference in level, because I've had Phil Harper on this podcast, who is the football operations manager at the Crows and probably the one who recruited you, he's essentially like the dad, I think. And he was saying that when he looks back, have you actually heard the story about how it all started, that very first game, and what he said in regards to them playing against GWS?
No, I haven't heard the story. So yeah, please.
So the AFL said they're going to start this AFLW competition, I think, and so 2016, they were talking about it, and they said to Phil at the Crows, "We think you're going to be the worst team. We think you're going to finish bottom of the ladder." And he kind of said, "Okay, all right then, fair enough. If you think that, who's the second worst team in your opinion?" And they said, "We think GWS is going to be the second worst team and finish second bottom of the ladder." And he said, "Okay, sweet. I just have one request. We play GWS first round." And they played GWS first round and won it, and built a whole bunch of momentum from that first win, and then went on to have the most successful resume of any AFLW club in history. He also said, Phil, that if that most recent premiership team of, is it 21? I'm losing track of the years now, 21 or 22. Yeah. It doesn't help when they put 2 seasons into 1 year like they did. But the most recent premiership, if that team played against the first premiership team, that they would have won by 20 goals, because the improvement in skill level of women's footy has improved that much.
I completely agree. And I think we're not only seeing that in the AFLW competition, but across the nation. If you're looking at even our local competition in the NTFL, you see such a significant growth in skill and ability in the women's, in competition alone.
Are you an Aussie Rules footballer who would like to maximise your performance to succeed at the top level? My Australian Rules Football Dynamic Group Coaching Program is a 12-phase program that has been curated from my 15+ years working as a strength and conditioning coach with local footballers right through to AFLW players at Adelaide and Richmond. To get instant access to my Australian Rules Football Dynamic Group Coaching Program, simply head on over to jacobandre.com/Australian-rules-football. Yeah. So you're at the Crows, then tell me about the transition out of the Crows and into Gold Coast Suns.
Right. So I played my first full season injury-free in 2018. I was a utility player at the time, so I actually was kind of swung around a bit. I remember one of my very first games, Beck got on and sort of said, "Oh, you've got such good athletic ability. I'm going to play you as a defender on one of the best forwards in the competition," who was Katie Brendan at the time, who was a fairly well-known female football player in Australia, I guess you could say. And I didn't know too many of the players, but I had heard of this particular player. Oh, she's a pretty good forward. So here's me coming off of my first ever AFL season ever against someone that's probably been in footy for, a significant 6 to 8 years and has rose through the ranks and got a great reputation. So here's little old me, barely played 11 games of footy in my life, and I'm about to play on the best forward in the competition. And I remember having so much fun in that game, just having absolutely no idea what I was doing. Like, I just defend that girl. That's all I had to do. And I think if I sort of hone in on my abilities, I've actually been a defender in netball for majority of my life. I was a little bit shorter as I was younger, so I played centre a bit. So I've got the running capacity, but I'm mainly a defender in most other sports. So I've been thrown around on the board. My magnet's been thrown around, I guess you could say. I've been trialled in so many different positions. And yeah, so that first season was kind of crazy because I was forward, and then I was back, and then I was rucking, and then I was playing on elite forwards, or I had a job specifically each game. So each game that I got to play, I got to know a different position basically from scratch for the first time at the highest level. So my first year was a bit bizarre. And then and then the NT Thunder came about, and we entered a VFL team into the competition, women's that is. And I played all of the VFL season, and they talk about like breakout games or breakout seasons where you kind of go, oh, I actually get what I'm doing now and I'm feeling confident and things are starting to make sense. So I kind of got that throughout that VFL season. I thought, I think I'm going to be a much better asset to the Crows now because I actually feel like I know what I'm doing in the lead up to that next year. So I put in a massive preseason, and I remember the coach just being really stoked with my progression and how I was going. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, yes, I'm going to finally be playing at the highest level and actually playing and know what I'm doing and hopefully play well. Like I was quite excited for the season to come. And this is 2019 now. And leading into the season, we had a trial game against Fremantle. They come across to Darwin, and that was kind of like a bit of tradition in those first 2 seasons is that Fremantle Dockers would come into Darwin and we'd put on a preseason game and all of the locals got to come and watch us, and it was a pretty big deal. Like that was a pretty big game on the calendar each year. So I was looking forward to that, leading into that really well. And I think it was about 5 minutes into the game, our number one ruck, Ree Metcalf, had landed awkwardly and done her ACL. So blew out her knee in the first 5 minutes of the game, which was devastating. And then I was handed the reins to be number one ruck. At the time, we didn't have very many tools, and I was kind of like the next person able to play in that position. And I'd been training and playing there through the VFL. So I was like, yes, I'm confident. Like, this is my moment to shine. This is going to be great. And I think it was this second quarter, one of the first leaps of the game, I jumped up and landed down awkwardly on my ankle and wiped myself out for the entire season. I'd pretty much ruptured every ligament you could in your ankle and had to undergo surgery pretty soon after that, and unfortunately meant I was rubbed out of the 2019 season. So I watched the Crows have great success that year, and they went on to win the Premiership, and I was unfortunately sidelined for that whole period. Then in 2020, the Gold Coast Suns joined the competition, and that was their inaugural year. And the partnership between Adelaide and the Northern Territory, with limited or not that many players remaining in the Territory, most had moved down to Adelaide. The Gold Coast Suns come in, and there was a new negotiation between states, or I guess zones to pick from. So the Territory became a Gold Coast Suns region rather than a South Australian region. So there was a bit of a shift in what the Territory, like who the Territory team now is. And as a Territory-based player and person, now I wanted to stick with the Territory and I guess try and help drive footy in the Territory and remain in Darwin. And I felt for my progression and my own personal, where I was in my life at the time, I thought that the best thing for me would be to stick with that and remain Territory-based and become a Gold Coast Sun. And that was kind of like my thoughts behind that. I also thought it'd be so great to go and live on the Gold Coast for a short period of time, learn to surf, see what life had to offer down there, because I'd never really been to the Gold Coast prior to being drafted there. So I went to the Suns in 2020 in their inaugural year, and that was such a great and eye-opening experience for me as well. But unfortunately, at the end of 2020, as you know, COVID then jumped into gear and put a stop to the season in 2020. So I think there was 7 rounds or so, and I think I played the season until COVID put it to a halt. I was then pretty much told you must get out of the state as soon as possible, because there's a chance you'll be locked here, like locked down, which did happen. So I remember being on a flight back from our last game in Fremantle, and they said that's it. The AFL season's now ceased, and if you're an interstate player, we advise that you pack your things when we get home and get out. So I then returned to South Australia for about 4 months, and luckily at the time I was working a remote job, so I was able to kind of work from anywhere, and then moved back up to Darwin. And COVID was still a factor in 2021, so I had to make a decision in that year if I wanted to return to the Gold Coast or remain in the Territory and work and just enjoy, I guess, the local life. And I resumed playing for the NTFL at that time as well, and just decided that I would put a bit of a stop to the AFLW. Just it was too risky with COVID and the unknowns, and with work as well being so helpful and so good to me. I didn't want to do the wrong thing by them and take off again. So I kind of felt like I was a bit stuck in that sense that I needed to be in the territory for that year. And unfortunately, that meant for me putting AFLW on hold while all the COVID saga was happening. And then at the end of 2021, at the start of 2022, my best friend ran into Chelsea Randall on chance. I think Chelsea went to one of her schools. My best friend's a teacher. And said, "Oh, you know, how's Jazz going?" Because she obviously we'd met and she knows Chelsea. And Kim, my mate at the time, said, "Oh, you know, she's doing really well. Like she's playing footy up and down." And I think Chelsea might have said, like why isn't she playing? Like why isn't she like where is she? So it kind of ignited a conversation of where am I at with my football. And next thing you know, I'm chatting to Phil Harper and we're talking about my return. So it's kind of a bizarre footy. I've sort of been everywhere and done a few things, and it's been a bizarre footy experience for me personally.
That's so cool. We started talking about manifestation very briefly before we started hitting record. And that's just such a prime example of manifestation, you know, like I love it. The fact, and how much pull does Chelsea Randall have to be able to just run into your friend and then get back to the club and be like, hey, you need to get this girl back on a list. It's so cool.
Yeah, she definitely ignited that conversation. And I reached out to Phil as well, saying, look, I'm still keen. Like I wouldn't say that, like I guess I needed that time away from footy to realise that I still had that fire and that I still really loved the game. And playing footy in the territory, I guess, ignited that as well, being able to play for the Pints Football Club, which is where I am now. They really reignited that passion and love for the game again for me. And at that time too, I was probably at a point where I was ready again. Like my ankle had been so angry for such a long time after my injury that I kind of lost a love for it, because with the Suns, I was playing through so much pain, and it just, I wouldn't say it wasn't enjoyable because I loved the experience, but I wasn't able to really play at my best because I just physically couldn't. I couldn't jump as high. I couldn't run as fast. It was just, it was a really tough period for me, for my footy.
Speaking about that 2019 season where the first ruckman goes down with an ACL, then you go down with an ankle, what ended up happening in the ruck stocks that year for them to even, how did they even win a premiership?
Yeah, so we were really lucky that we had another football player in the club called Jessica Foley. So her role, I think, before taking on the ruck role was actually as like a key defender, like a really fantastic key defender position, really diverse, and maybe even could play forward as well, but another tall utility player, key position utility player. So I'm not sure if she really dabbled in ruck a lot before that. Potentially in the Sandful she did, but yeah, she kind of slotted straight into that position and made it her own. She absolutely killed it.
So 2021, I think it is, you reach out to Phil reaches out to you, you start playing again. This is where we met. I had been working with Danielle Ponta for a season before it. I think it was only one, maybe two, I can't remember. Phil rings me up and says, hey, he goes, I know I've got you've got a real footballer in Danielle, but he goes, I've got a real athlete for you. You are going to love working with this girl. And enter Jasmyn Hewett. And so I loved working with you because literally you could give you anything and you would ask for more. What was that season like for you? As you alluded to earlier, it was hard to break in. So how did the season pan out?
Yeah, so like I said, the team was already really well established, and by chance me coming back in didn't actually mean that they had a spot readily open and available for me. I knew that it would take time to break into a team. Like, I guess you think of it as like a new draftee. You don't often see new draftees get games straight off the bat, or, you know, their ability to break into a team straight away, a strong team, is almost impossible. And I felt that's kind of the position that I was in. And I knew that I was going down and training with the best team in the competition. I can say that now because they were, and still, in my opinion, are. So to even get a game or 2 or 3, which I think I did in the end, was really special because it wasn't my goal for the season. My goal was just to go down and reinvent myself as a footy player and I guess prove a point to myself that I was capable. And I guess I felt in my previous years that I hadn't really been able to achieve what I'd wanted to in that space. And that's what drew me back to it. And I guess now that I look back, I manifested something and I think that I was able to get exactly what I was hoping to get.
Yeah. So how many games? So I think, did you play a couple of games early on, or at least one game early on in the season, and then you came in? When did you come in at the end? It was before the grand final? It wasn't just for the grand final, was it?
Yeah. So I'd played a few games through the season, but I wasn't consistently getting games. There was girls performing so well on the weekends that they deserved to be in the team before me, well and truly. So I guess I kind of had to wait for an opening, or as bad as it sounds and as cutthroat as AFLW can be, I had to wait for someone to underperform to be able to get the opportunity to then cement my spot, if that makes sense. But that opportunity didn't really come. It only really came in resting players or unavailability for that particular round. So I wasn't actually able to break into the starting side, which is totally fair, coming off of the footy that I had and the calibre that was there at the time. So my goal was to just go and enjoy it, and to be able to even play a handful of games was, I felt really fortunate and really lucky to have been able to do that.
And so what happened for you to get that opportunity at the pointy end of the season? Was it someone that got injured?
No, it was actually through suspension, which isn't really a nice way to go in at all, because you've got a devastated teammate not able to play, not because they are unable to physically, but through a pretty unfortunate incident. So for me, it was kind of like I was stoked. I was riding this massive high, but then on the flip side of that, I had a really devastated teammate and a lot of people that were devastated for her as well. So it kind of like, I wouldn't say it put a dampen on my selection. It was kind of like, oh, like, congratulations, Jazz, but you know, that's such a horrible reason to have to like get the call up for my teammate. So it was kind of like a really weird week for me, because I didn't know whether to feel happy or sad or what, really.
And this was grand final week, hey?
This was grand final week. So being told that I would play was, huge, massive for me. But I guess like I considered myself a pretty caring person, and I could not sleep. Like I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that someone else was missing out, and I was getting given a position as a result of that. So it was kind of like I felt like a bad guy when in a way, but I knew that that wasn't the case, and that come the day, that was completely out of my mind at that stage.
And who was the player that missed out?
Montana McKinnon, one of our young girls who had been doing so well through the year and really, had a really breakout season and was playing out of her skin. So she was super unfortunate to miss out, and all going well, she will hopefully get her opportunity very soon.
So the home and away season's just wrapped up. Finals are about to begin. How do you see it all falling into place for the Crows to win another premiership?
I back them all the way any day. I watched their season this year, and they're such an underrated side. I don't know why they aren't at the top of everyone's radar every year. They seem to just be, they've won the most premierships out of any team, and I feel like they're still so underrated. They're just, and knowing all the girls personally and seeing their skill set, I guess, behind closed doors or not on the telly, like, they are so, so talented. All of those girls are unbelievably talented. And as the seasons progress, they're just getting better and better and better. So I think their finals campaign is going to be a really exciting one to watch.
What did you think is the aspects that sets the Crows apart? And what did you learn the most from being at the Crows?
Oh, that's really difficult to say. Just professionalism and drive and willingness to put their hearts on their sleeves and play footy for one another. It's hard and tricky sometimes at that level to kind of get lost in your own personal performance. But, I didn't feel like that was the case with the Crows. They all play for one another. They don't play for, I guess, the recognition or solo performances. They are really a fantastic group to be in, and I'm so fortunate to have been able to play there.
Yeah. You played with some absolute stars. She's no longer there, but she's retiring this year, Erin Phillips. What was it like to play with her?
Yes, she's incredible. She's one of those players that, I guess, for me, not really being based in South Australia for the most part of my career with the Crows, she was the kind of player that you strive to be like, and she didn't have to say much. She would, I guess, actions speak louder than words, and she's the kind of player that would just get on the track, train her heart out, and give you a little word or two of encouragement, which would be more than enough to set you on fire and just give you something else. Like, she's just a phenomenal leader that everyone wanted to play like and everyone wanted to be like. And it was just, I guess, kind of bizarre thinking that I was actually her teammate. I've often said that I was just a fangirl running around watching her be brilliant half the time. But, how she goes about things and how professional she is with the game and her willingness to assist, everyone around her is a big reason why she is one of the best that she is. And, yes, it's going to be very sad, I guess, next season when she's not in the competition.
Yeah, she's an absolute star. You were a star on grand final day when you won that premiership and kicked the first goal. I actually think she might have been the first one to get over to you. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, she definitely was.
And what was that
she
like?
might have whispered something said something to me before I kicked it, like, oh, I'd like back yourself, or something minor, which is always enough. Like, I remember going into ruck contests and stuff, and in the mix of it all, she'd come up and just say, just grab it yourself, like, go yourself, sort of thing. And kind of forget, like, oh, actually, like, sure, I'll give it a crack, and just ignites little things within you, each and every individual, to sort of, I guess, give you that little bit of fire. And she was really good at that, just those little words here and there to, ignite momentum in yourself, I guess. But that first kick, first goal is probably one of my favorite sporting moments ever of my career. And I still, remember the crowd and everyone and how happy my teammates were. And I think, it's that moment of relief and release, like, okay, like I've done something that I set out to achieve. This is like where my career's come down to. I'm playing in a grand final. I've just kicked a goal. It was almost like a massive weight or rush of emotion just dropped off me. Like, everything that's led up to this moment is worth it. Like, for this moment right now, playing with these girls that I'm playing with on my home turf in front of all of these amazing people, all these incredible fans, it was just like a moment of like pure bliss. It was just, I would be happy I was like, that's it, take me off. I'm done. I've done my bit. I'm happy. I've achieved what I wanted to in my career. If we win this game, it'll just be icing on the cake. But I think that moment defined my whole footy career, and I'm so thankful to have experienced that.
You said on your home deck because, of course, the game was played at Adelaide Oval, and I just have to say, you're giving me goosebumps and making me teary because I was watching this game. I was, Phil had said, come down if you want, and I decided not to, and I'll probably kick myself forever that I didn't. But I watched it from my lounge room, and I wanted to be on my own. I just wanted to be just me with the TV and watch it with the best coverage possible so I could be up close. And man, I was fist pumping when you kicked that goal. I was so pumped. I was like a proud dad. And then,
and in a way, I do have to, thank you, because you were a big part of my preseason leading into that moment. So I guess that moment of ecstasy, I guess, that I experienced, in a part was thanks to you. So thank you, Jacob. I genuinely do appreciate, what you were able to assist me with, especially in those preseason months leading into the season. Just such a great experience of working, really.
It's a privilege to be able to work with such committed and disciplined people. There was a moment to that goal. Do you remember who kicked it to you?
Yes, I do. It was Danielle, and I thought to myself, I didn't expect her to miss it, so I backed her. So when
By the way, I don't think she was passing that.
Definitely not.
Did she say anything afterwards?
She did not, but I can guarantee you that it wasn't a miss kick. She was actually rather close. It was right on the face of the goal. So if it had gone to the left 3 meters, it would have been a goal. So quite lucky that, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But I was actually backing her. I think I had to run quite a way to get into that contest to take that mark, because initially I was thinking that she had this covered. So, it just panned out the way that it did. And, thank God it did.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable moment. So the rest of the game, tell me, how did it all finish up? Celebrations, like what was all of that like, to know you're a Premiership player?
Yeah, when they give out the medals with the little kids that you give the hats at the end, I think that's when it actually set in that, oh my gosh, like we actually did it, we actually won it. And when I was down in Adelaide, I was affiliated with a football team there, because if you're not playing games with the Adelaide Crows at that level, you were given opportunity to play games in the local league there, just to keep, I guess, games up, so that you were able to come in. And as you would know, how important that game fitness and body contact is while you are playing at the top level, to have that consistency. So I was playing with the Sturt Football Club in South Australia and have ever since. And I remember going up to get my medals, and there was a lot of Sturt girls in the crowd. I remember when my name was called, distinctively, this massive group of girls all going berserk in the stands. And I'm thinking, that's definitely my Sturt girls over in the stands, like it has to be. But I think in that moment, it was like, oh my gosh, like they're right. Like, this is exciting. This is amazing. Like, this is the best feeling ever. And I think at that moment, being able to fist pump the little kid and give him a hat was just like, wow, like what a moment.
So you come back to Darwin after all of that. You get this job with the Airport Fireys. You're playing local footy again for Pint. You ultimately won a premiership under Ricky Nolan, who's also been a guest on this podcast. Tell me about that. And I have to be mindful of time because I know you've got to get off to Pint footy training soon. Tell me about that, because you were a fair way behind, I believe, in the game before that to get into that grand final. 4 goals, I think. And I'm pretty sure you were playing St. Mary's, who was also fielding Danielle Ponta. Yes,
we love a good rivalry, me and DP. No, I actually have such a big, I guess, respect and a love for Saints. Obviously, that's where my footy career started. So I love seeing their progression, and I love the fact that they're, getting better and better and better as the years progress as well. So I was super excited for that game, because I thought, either way, as much as I want to win, I'd love to see Saints in the grand final. Like, I would love to see the club progress in the years to get to that point. I mean, it's amazing that they got to the point that they did, and they're continuing to press, and they're probably one of the teams that I think will be to beat this year as they continue to do well. But so for me, it was kind of funny, because it was like, both my teams are going to make it no matter what, So it's kind of like, this is really cool. I get to play some of my good friends and DP as well. We have a bit of a laugh and a giggle, might tackle each other and, give each other a bit of a tickle or something, like just a bit of fun and ha-ha. So, it was good. And obviously having her in the middle when you're rucking is a bit of a challenge too, because as you're aware, she's incredibly talented. So my theory was just get the ball anywhere near away from Danielle. Like, do not get the ball anywhere near her. That's the strategy. That's what we're going with. I don't know what else we can really do to nullify her, existing in this midfield. Like, she's just a hassle. But no, it was an incredible game. I mean, I can't even barely remember the first part of the game, but I distinctively remember the second half of that game.
Well, I'm pretty sure you were 4 goals down at 3/4 time, and in stepped Jasmyn Hewett to win that game, essentially.
I wouldn't say that. Definitely not.
But I'm pretty sure that's what most people do.
Well, no. There's no I in team, especially not in football. So I think everybody lifted in that last 2 quarters of the game. We knew that if we didn't do something now, that's it, season over. I think just starting that chain. I think perhaps kicking that first goal and being like, all right, we're within 3 kicks of this, gave the team a bit of belief. And I think not just myself, but there was multiple contributors that lifted in that last 2 quarters that I guess made it possible to come back. I guess in women's footy, when you think about 4 goals, like that's a pretty big difference, especially in territory football where it is insanely hot and the conditions are not easy to play in. Big scores and 4 goals is pretty significant.
So you then go into grand final week again with Pint, and you take on Waratahs. I went and watched this game, and I was going for Pint simply for you. I had a couple of girls that I'd worked with at Waratahs as well that I kind of wanted to do well. But I was probably leaning towards wanting Pint to win. And also knew Heidi Thompson, who was the coach at Waratah. I've interviewed her on this podcast, and she's a very, very good coach, as is Rick. Both very good minds in terms of football strategy, I believe. Yeah. And as much as I wanted Pint to win, I actually thought Waratah were going to. And I think they might have even beaten you a couple of weeks before that.
They had, they were the genuine favourites, I would say, leading into that game. They had a lot of players that had been flying in and playing footy throughout the season, and they had some very strong players in that side. So we certainly didn't know what to expect, but we genuinely knew that it would be a huge game and that we'd have to bring our best footy to be able to win it.
And so how did you win it? Because from quarter time, it was pretty much one-way traffic.
Yeah, I think, and this has happened before, losing that first final is sometimes more of a blessing than a curse, in my opinion. I think that it gave us a bit of a kick up the bum, to be honest, in the things that we needed to work on, or that games aren't just won without 100% effort. And I think we went into that first quarter like we need to give everything. We can't wait till halftime. We can't not bring it at all in a game. We have to be switched on and want it and genuinely go out 100% firing from the second that ball went up. And I think we were able to achieve that instantly, and that's what gave us that instant edge over Waratahs on the day. They probably started just a little bit too slow. They still came back in, and I believe they actually might have even kicked the first goal, thinking back to it. But I knew instantly that we were on our game, like that it was going to be a big, big game for us because we were all up and about. The vibes were really high to start with. We knew what we had to do. And there wasn't any question about that. And well, looking back now, we did exactly what we were asked to do. And, yeah, it was a great game to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Unbelievable. And well done on winning it. You were obviously the best on ground, and you were the one that I picked for best on ground as well. What was Rick like before the game started? Was there any video analysis or anything like that?
No, I don't believe there was. I think we were approaching the game in a similar manner to what we did leading into the St. Mary's game. I don't think we changed much at all in the lead up to that game. It's very business as usual, but the significance and importance of it was obviously mentioned on many occasions. And, yeah, it's kind of hard to think back. You don't really remember those moments after a big win, but I do remember him saying that no matter what happened or no matter the outcome of the game or the season, that he was super proud and he was already over the moon and happy, and it didn't matter. So I think the pressure was released from, we have to win this. It has to win like at all cost. That was lifted before the game. Like, it doesn't matter. We are one. We want to have fun, like give everything we've got. But at the end of the day, like, the result doesn't actually matter. And I guess in a way it does matter, but to just have that reassurance or have that pressure taken off you, I don't know if that helps others, but it certainly helped me.
Rick actually mentioned that on his podcast episode, but about, I'm proud of you girls, no matter what happens, go out and do your thing. But being proud of you being the thing that he was emphasizing. When you're privileged enough, like I am, to sit in this seat and speak to so many people, there's themes that come up that you notice. And one of the things when it comes to winning grand finals that I hear over and over again is the value of losing a grand final. You've just touched on it in terms of losing the first final. It wasn't a grand final, but I really think there's a value to losing at least a final. What do you think of that?
Yeah, 100%. I think it, in a way, subtly humbles you, and the fire is always there. We're out, we're training, multiple hours of the week. We're putting in the effort. We're rocking up. We're putting aside shifts, changing shifts. So we've got a lot of shift workers. So we've got people juggling things. So the passion and drive is definitely there. We've got girls going above and beyond to play footy, but that fire, that aggression, the desire to win, in my opinion, if you win for a long time, that little flame starts to dim down just a little bit. You forget the sense of winning or the satisfaction of winning because you haven't experienced anything other than that. So to experience a loss, it just reignites that flame, like, that's right, this is why we play footy. We don't want to feel like this. We want to feel good. We want to win. We want to be on top of our game. So I guess that little gaslight may have just slightly started to dimmer, even though it's still there because we love it. We love playing for one another and the game itself. But yeah, I think a loss really reignites that flame and that drive to, like, we don't want to lose anymore. I think you need that. And I think losing the first final, and we've done it before, it's almost like our momentum shifter, like, to be experiencing losses, like, actually makes you better footballers and makes you play better. You don't want to have a bad game. It gives you drive to want to be better.
Yeah, and I think the other theme that I've noticed is the business as usual comment that you made, while at the same time being reminded that this one's not just any old game. This is more important, but let's still do all of our everyday routines in the week leading up and on game day. It's business as usual, but know that this is a more important game. Yes,
that's right. And funny you mentioned that. I remember the game leading into that semi or prelim, I forget, the game against Waratahs to start with that we played. I remember drinking a fizzy drink or having a mouthful of like a V or something, and I never do that. I never have fizzy drinks before games. Like, I just felt like I needed some caffeine or something, and I was like, yeah, I'll have some of this. I never drink pre-workout or stuff like that. So like, this is going to give me like, an edge. I'm going to feel like really energized. Like, yeah, let's try it. I remember going out there and I had this really weird thing happen to me where it was almost like a giant air bubble in my chest. And I actually struggled to play that game. I was barely able to run. I had to go off multiple times, and I was like having these weird, I guess, like indigestion issues before playing this game of footy. And I remember like, why did I do that? Why did I drink this drink before the game? I never do that. And I've literally just stitched myself up because I can't play to the ability that I usually do because I'm literally suffering. I can't even breathe. Like, it's just, yeah. So as you said, like, and ever since, I'm like, nah, I have exactly what I'm supposed to eat before a game. I don't change anything. There's no way I'm going anywhere near a fizzy drink before a footy game ever again. I never want to experience that. It was so bizarre. So, yeah, I completely agree. I think it changes everything, having that routine, and what works best for you, don't change it. Basically, that's my advice.
Yeah, good advice. And so what's next for you in life?
I think I'm just enjoying life now. I have travelled around and had all these incredible experiences, and, moving down to Melbourne for my firefighting course, I got to be down there and got to meet some amazing humans. And lifelong friends now down there, and coming back to the station life is awesome. I have such a fantastic crew. They're all awesome people too. And I feel so blessed. Like, I'm just, I guess, so happy with where I'm at the moment, and even just playing footy in the NTFL and enjoying, the group that we're with, and still having Ricky as a coach. Everything feels so right at the moment. So I'm not in a hurry to change anything. I'm happily just living life up here, and, I have my dream job now and I can still play footy. So that's a huge win. And if AFLW comes knocking again, I would certainly consider my options or the opportunities presented because, at the end of the day, I still love footy. And, if I can play at the highest level, who wouldn't want to do that? But I'm quite content and quite happy with where things are at now. And, yeah, I guess I'll just continue living life here.
That's awesome, and you deserve it all. We're going to wrap up with a 10 and 10, which I haven't given you a heads up on yet, but I'll explain in a second. Before I do, I just want to thank you for coming on the Mind Your Body show today and acknowledge you for all of the work that you do in raising the standard of women's football across the country and other sports like netball, all the stuff you're involved with, all the people you help, and congratulate you on becoming that AFLW Premiership player. So
thank you, Jacob, for having me. Amazing.
No worries. While you have been talking, I've been writing some notes. I've got 10 questions here. I'm just going to go through and say back some of the things that you brought up and get the first thing that comes to mind. You can?
Oh, God. Okay, yeah, let's go.
All right. Number one, bizarre injuries.
Oh, I'd have to say my little toe. Those who know.
Number two, firefighting.
Best job in the world.
Number three, the Adelaide Crows.
Best team in the world.
Number four, footy opportunities for kids.
Oh.
This is in relation to when you brought up kicking the footy with your dad.
Yeah, so if you love footy and you want to play, don't be afraid. It's for everyone.
Number five, draft combines in general. What are they like?
Oh, physically demanding, exhilarating. Such a fun experience.
Number six, the growth of women's footy.
Love to see it. Wish to help improve it. Hopefully leaps and bounds in the years to come.
Number seven, becoming a premiership player.
One of the best moments in my life, for sure.
Number eight, breaking into a new team.
Oh, stick with it. You never know when you'll get your opportunity.
Number nine, the number one thing, you can only say one thing that you learned in your time playing at the Adelaide Crows.
I'm going to say true. And the word true means something in the Adelaide Crows. It isn't just a word. So I'll leave it with true.
I like that. I love it. And number 10 is a generic question, which I ask everybody, and it's a little bit of an insight into my weird mind. I would love to be able to time travel. If you could time travel, you go forward in time or back in time, which would it be to? Which point in time would it be to and why? Knowing you can come back to now and you can travel around, but you can only go to one spot in time, one time.
Oh, man. I'm going to keep this football related rather than, I guess, personal, because there's many things I'm sure I would do, but let's keep it footy wise. I would turn the time back to that pre-season game against Fremantle. I would tell Reece Metcalf not to go out on the field that game, and myself included.
Oh, really? I thought you were going to say I was going to go back and celebrate that premiership win again.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if that was meant to be, it was meant to be anyway. So if I was able to play that season and hopefully remain in the team, I would have won a premiership anyway. So you never know.
That's so cool. I like that. Go out and say, don't go out and take the field. Imagine how that season would have turned out, like having the two of you like sliding doors.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you never know. And that's just one occasion. I'm sure there'd be many things that I would return into time and relive, including that premiership moment for sure.
Jazz, thank you so much for your time today and best wishes for the future.
Thanks again for having me. Appreciate it.
What's the most overlooked part of running, but the most important? Your mechanics. My new course, Running Mechanics 101, is a 9-module course which will teach you how to run more efficiently and effectively. For free instant access, simply head on over to jacobandre.com.